All eyes will be on the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, of course, come tomorrow when he delivers the medium-term budget policy statement. This amid rolling blackouts, COVID-19 challenges, the unemployment crisis, among so many other things. Let's just get a sense of exactly where we stand and maybe what to also expect. I'm speaking now to Dominic Brown of the Alternative Information and Development Center. He's joining us now. Very good evening, Dominic. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Before we talk about maybe what we can expect from the Finance Minister tomorrow. Business costs are rising because of the power cuts. So many things are going wrong. Just paint a quick picture of what we're facing right now in South Africa.
I think you started to map it out when you indicate the kind of crisis of unemployment. So we have a deep socio-economic crisis. Beyond more than 44% unemployed in terms of the expanded definition. You have 14 million people without access to free basic sanitation. You have more than 20 million people without the provision of fresh water. You have 10 million people, of which 3 million are children who are starving each week. And over and above this, you have an economy that's stagnating and lots of corruption, maladministration, and a government that's hell-bent on cutting the budgets of key areas of the economy, including infrastructure, to basic education, to healthcare, to municipal infrastructure. We also see cuts to local government in terms of the conditional and equitable share grants. And these cuts, not to mention the cuts to the public sector wage bill, when you put them together, they amount to the biggest budget cuts in post-apartheid South Africa. And they will definitely deepen the crisis faced by the majority of South Africans in the country.
So the Finance Minister will be looking forward, he'll have to have some sort of growth forecast. Surely that's now dampened by, with the power cuts, with COVID-19 and so forth. Are you expecting much?
I'm expecting a business as usual approach, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do. If we want to revitalize the economy, not to mention deal with the massive problem of climate change, we need to be spending and investing a lot more. We should start off by implementing a basic income grant so that we can deal with a massive crisis of hunger. But more than that, we need to put ourselves on a low-carbon reindustrialization development path. And this means investing heavily in transforming the energy sector towards ensuring that Eskom becomes a fully public renewable energy utility. But it also means we need a massive housing program. We have to invest in education and healthcare and in public services, the very things that the pandemic has shown we need more of and not less.
Dominic, I just want to take you back. You mentioned so many budget cuts to municipalities and so forth, and yet you were saying that we should introduce that basic income grant. Can we afford it? We're already cutting so many other areas. So
the reason for the budget cuts is not because South Africa is a poor country. In fact, there's lots of resources. And of course, the first issue we will need to deal with is the debt crisis, or the growing debt problem, I should say. And here we should look towards various domestic possibilities. One major one is the Government Employees Pension Fund. And here we are arguing that it should take on some of Eskom's debt at below market interest rate, a loan at below market interest rates, on condition that it transforms itself into a renewable energy utility. Now, the Government Employees Pension Fund has more than 1.8 trillion rand in accumulated reserves. And if Eskom transforms itself and becomes the renewable energy utility for the country, this would be a solid investment for workers and for the country going forward. Now, if you think of Eskom's debt, which is approximately 400 billion rand, you can take on at least half of this through the GPF with no real added risk if you transform Eskom, including fighting the corruption within Eskom. adding capacity, and investing in its renewable energy capacity going forward.
Are you expecting are you expecting any short-term measures at all to be announced? Let's look at small business that's really, being hit by the power cuts, and also, we've had lockdowns, so many things working against small businesses, and that's where when we look at the recovery for the country that the president has touted, it's in the small business sector, and yet it's been hit hard. You think they'll be creative at all and come up with some short-term measures that might, bring some relief to this sector?
Given the increased revenue from taxes from booming the mining sector, there may be some relief given to small businesses, but ultimately this can only go so far. If you're in a situation where most of the people in the economy cannot afford to buy goods and services because they are unemployed and don't have sufficient income, then this relief to small businesses will be extremely limited. So what we really need to do is rethink how we want to plan the economy over the medium term. And I can say that there's many movements and organizations who are arguing that there are real alternatives and are going to be mobilizing around the country, in Johannesburg, in Bloemfontein, Bombela, and in Mpumalanga. In Cape Town, we're having a big march from Hanover Street to the CCMA to Parliament to say we have to end budget cuts. Similarly, in Makanda and Gqeberha. And this is a start of a process to say that the finance minister can't continue with business as usual, and we can't continue to hear empty promises while our pots and our stomachs remain empty. We need a change, and we need to invest in the people and the planet. Otherwise, we may see more situations like we saw in July this year, but also increasing levels of hunger and starvation, growing levels potentially of xenophobia as people turn on each other in this crisis.
All right, thank you so much there. Dominic Brown is hoping for, or at least for us to move away from business as usual. Dominic Brown of the Alternative Information and Development Center.